The story begins as we see a girl who's sad because her teddy bear was torn, and her mother thinks it's a shame since they just bought it, but she tells the girl they can just replace it. The bear is thrown away and taken to an underground facility, but we meet a boy named Rudo who sneaks into the building. As he goes through the trash, a guard pulls up on him and recognizes him as the trash raider who's been stealing garbage from the city. He activates the alarm, which alerts the other guards, but Rudo quickly throws trash at them and gets into the air ducts. He tries to escape, but the guards close the gates and they start shooting him. So he dodges their bullets as he runs away, but one of them hits his shoulder and he still manages to get away. The news about the garbage theft spreads everywhere, and the people in the city blame the slum residents, wondering why they don't stick to their side of the wall. Everyone in the slums knows that it's Rudo, because it isn't the first time he's done it, and they're afraid that his actions will bring them trouble. Rudo's friend Chiwa warns him that he might get into serious trouble if he doesn't stop, and she wonders why he keeps stealing trash. So he explains that the city folk keep throwing away perfectly usable items, telling her he can't help but feel sorry for them, and he adds that it also helps with his expenses. They're suddenly interrupted by three boys, and their leader tells Chiwa to stop hanging out with Rudo, or else she'll also smell like garbage. He makes fun of Rudo's gloves, because he hasn't washed them in years, and one of the boys kicks his lantern, saying no one will buy his garbage. As they continue to mock Rudo, Chiwa reminds them that they all live in the slums, so they shouldn't bully him. One of the boys mentions that Rudo is the son of a serial killer, and unlike Rudo's father, they've been trying to create a better image for themselves. We learn that everyone in the slums is also a descendant of a criminal, and Rudo tries to stay patient, but when they continue talking about his father, he becomes angry. They're afraid of his expression, and as they walk away, they mention that he's just like his father, so he might also become a murderer in the future. But Chiwa believes he isn't a bad person, and she seems to be interested in the teddy bear he found last night, so he tells her it isn't for sale. He's about to give it to her for free, but Chiwa's mother suddenly arrives, and as they make their way home, she advises Chiwa to stay away from him. After that, Rudo returns home, but his guardian Recto teases him because of his awkward conversation with Chiwa. He advises Rudo to be confident about how he feels, and also tells him to stop his raids because he's putting himself at risk. He thinks Rudo is doing it to help him, and he recalls how Recto raised him after he was abandoned by his parents. But he notes that he doesn't feel like he owes Recto for raising him, explaining that he just wants to show his respect as family. Recto teases him again, telling him he should be that honest with Chiwa, which irritates Rudo, but Recto suddenly notices the wound on his arm and offers to check it. He also changes the bandages on Rudo's hands, and advises him to stay away from the dump sites once again, but Rudo notes that his wound isn't as bad as the ones his father left him with. Recto explains that major crimes are punished with an instant death sentence, where the criminal jumps into the pit, and we learn that Rudo's father faced the punishment. Rudo remembers how his hands were always pitch black, so people always stared at him, but one day, Recto gave him the gloves, which made things better for him. Recto tells him to confess his feelings to Chiwa, or someone else will steal her, but we see a mysterious man spying on them while they're talking. The next day, Recto convinces Rudo to talk to Chiwa, and he even gives him a lesson on how to smile. Rudo heads to her house, but on his way, he sees everyone gathered around the pit because they're executing another criminal. He wonders what happens to the people sent into the pit, but he's suddenly interrupted by Chiwa, who catches him off guard. She tells him that she doesn't wish for him to get thrown into the pit, and he mentions that Recto told him the same thing, so she notes that it's because Recto also loves him. They both become flustered as they realize what she just said, and he gives her the teddy bear, telling her it will be happy in her company. She happily accepts it, telling him she'll cherish it forever, and he runs off to inform Recto about what happened. Rudo returns home, but he sees Recto lying on the floor as a man stabs his chest, so he rushes to attack him. But he realizes that he's no match for him, and the man takes a book with him before he escapes. Rudo tells Recto he'll get help, but he tells Rudo he can change their world as he takes his last breath. The officers suddenly taser him from behind and arrest him because they think he murdered Recto, and he tries to convince them that he's innocent, but they think he's lying since he has blood on his clothes. After that, everyone gathers as the executioner notes that a murderer can't be forgiven, even if the victim was just an ordinary man from the slums. As Rudo is given the death sentence, everyone starts cheering, and he can't understand why no one believes him. He notices Chiwa and asks her to find Recto's real murderer, but even she believes that he's guilty, so she drops the bear and turns her back on him. Ruto feels all alone, and since no one believes that he's innocent, he thinks they're all just trash who have eyes and ears, but they can't even use them to see the truth. He promises to send them all to hell, and he suddenly notices the real murderer standing in front of him, but before he can say anything, he gets dropped into the pit. After a while, Ruto regains consciousness, and he's surprised that he's still alive, but he suddenly smells a foul odor and covers his nose. He remembers how he was sent to the pit, and he sees a giant monster, so he realizes that they were right to call it hell. He remembers how everyone's obsessed with punishing criminals, and they threw them down the pit as punishment, but no one cared what happened to them once they were sent there. He tries to escape from the trash monster, which summons other monsters with its roar, and they surround him from all sides. The monsters rush at him, so he dodges their attacks, but he trips to the ground, and he notices a human skull. He curses the people who sent him there, but the garbage crumbles, and the monsters stop attacking him. He notices that the air is poisonous, so he covers his mouth and nose as he looks for a safe spot, but he isn't sure if such a place even exists in this world. He suddenly starts vomiting blood, and the monsters approach him, so he wonders if he's about to die and starts to lose hope. But the image of Recto's death comes to his mind, and it reminds him that he can't give up, so he grabs an iron pipe, thinking he must avenge Recto and punish those who wronged him. The monster tries to attack him from behind, but he knocks it back and accidentally sends a ken flying towards a man named Engen, who's sitting nearby. So he uses his binoculars to look around, and he sees Ruto fighting the monsters. Ruto attacks the monsters as he ignores the poisonous air, and one of them sends him flying, but he refuses to give up, and grabs an old pole, which he swings with all his might. He hits a monster, but another one shows up beneath him, so he jumps away, but he coughs out blood again because of the poisonous air. Two monsters try to crush him, but the near-death experience awakens his hidden powers, and he destroys them with a metal sheet. Another monster appears, and Ruto is already exhausted, so he tries to run away, but it creates a strong shock wave that sends him flying. As he opens his eyes, he notices Engen, who kicks him away before placing a mask on his mouth. Ruto has a lot of questions, and Engen tells him to be silent, but he continues asking him questions about the pit. Engen whispers and tells him to keep his voice down, but Ruto doesn't understand him, telling him to speak clearly. Engen loses his composure, and he yells at Ruto that they aren't underground, explaining that it's the fault of people on the surface for turning the pit into hell. He tells Ruto that the trash beasts can't be defeated with ordinary weapons, and they're attracted to sound, so he was trying to keep a low profile. He blames Ruto for drawing attention towards them, and a beast approaches them, but he transforms his umbrella into a weapon. The beast attacks him, but he grinds it into pieces, and he notices a large group of monsters. But instead of being scared, he charges in and obliterates them with his umbrella, before jumping into the air and using it as a parachute. Ruto was impressed that he was able to defeat them so easily, and wishes that he had similar powers, so that he could also fight the people who sent him there. The last monster shoots acid at Engen, but he blocks the attack, and uses his special Umbreaker Octashredder to destroy the beast. Ruto asks him who he is, so he removes his mask, and introduces himself as a cleaner. But the toxic air stings his nose, and he once again blames Ruto for making him take it off, while Ruto collapses from exhaustion. We go back to Ruto's childhood, where he was bullied by other kids for saying objects are alive, because Recto taught him that when an object is treated with care, a soul will inhabit it. Recto reveals that it's an old legend, but he still believes in it, and Ruto wonders if his gloves have a soul as well, so Recto tells him a soul will inhabit them if he takes care of them. We return to the present, as Ruto wakes up and finds himself chained, so he tells Engen to free him, but Engen just drags him away. He notes that Ruto should be thankful to him for saving his life, but Ruto doesn't understand what he means, so Engen explains how he passed out earlier. Ruto wants to climb back to the upper world called the Sphere, because he wants to get revenge, but Recto tells him that it's impossible to return, so he should just accept his fate. Ruto refuses to give up, because he thinks Engen is hiding something from him, which makes Engen angry, so he decides to educate him on what kind of place they're in. Engen leaves him near a strange establishment with two trucks, and a group of masked men notice him, realizing he's from the Sphere. They're excited to see that he's still alive, because they mostly find Spheret's dead bodies, and he becomes nervous as they examine him, but they assure him that they won't harm him. They quickly start removing his chains, so he thinks they're nicer than Engin, but they suddenly chain him to their truck. They think they can sell him for a high price, and their leader mentions that the Spherets dumped waste on their ground, which has poisoned their air and land. It led to the creation of trash beasts, and those who were affected would love to torture him, because they blame the Spherets for ruining their world. The leader notices that Ruto is too thin, so he forces him to eat their trash food, but Ruto bites the flesh off his fingers and chews it along with the food. He tells them it's perfectly edible, and he once again taps into his hidden powers, which he uses to break free. He remembers how Regdo told him that treating objects with care makes them alive, and as he grabs the chain, his energy flows into it, which shocks the kidnappers. We see Engin watching him from a distance, and he's happy that Ruto is a giver, who can give life to objects just like him. The leader tells his men to attack Ruto, and he thinks a giver is useless without their object, so they should take his chain to defeat him. They struggle to get close to him, and one of them manages to disarm him, but he surprises them by grabbing a tire, which he turns into his weapon. Everyone's surprised seeing this, because it's rare for a giver to use more than one object, and he's able to take out the man. He's about to kill their boss, but Engin suddenly stops him, and Ruto regains his composure, asking Engin what just happened. The tire he was holding turns into dust, and his nose starts bleeding, as Engin tells him that his powers take a toll on his body. He apologizes for testing Ruto, and Engin knows that he has a lot of questions, so he promises to tell him everything. But in exchange, he must join their group of cleaners and fight monsters, but Ruto declines his offer. Engin takes Ruto to a clinic, and he calls his friend to tell him about recruiting Ruto, who he believes is a natural talent, but Ruto notes that he isn't ready to join them. He mentions that he needs to go back to the sphere, but the doctor tells him he's in no position to refuse, because Engin saved him by giving him a gas mask. As they leave the clinic, Ruto thanks Engin for paying his bill, and notes that he needs information, but he has no time to join their group. Engin reminds him how the people in their world view the Spherets, and notes that information isn't free, so he should just shut up and follow him. Engin takes Ruto to the city, and treats him to a burger, which surprises him, because he thought there would only be trash in the pit. Engin explains that garbage isn't the only thing that builds up on the ground, because emotions also build up anima, which converts into energy, and it's the reason why the trash beasts exist. He reveals that they mostly stay in the garbage dumps, but they sometimes attack the city, and regular weapons don't work on them, but his gloves can beat them because they also have anima. Engin notes that when an object is treated with care for a long time, an anima inhabits it, and they call these objects vital instruments. He tells Ruto that their organization needs more givers to fight the trash beasts, so Ruto wonders if in exchange for joining their group, Engin will teach him how to return to the surface. So he reveals that he doesn't know how to do that, but notes that his boss is a wise man, who might be able to help him. Engin asks him about his gloves, so he reveals that his dad gave them to him, and they're the only thing to remember him by. Engin thinks he should take care of them, which makes him emotional, because everyone else mocked him for his old gloves. Engin suddenly gets a message, so he decides to leave, but Ruto thanks him for everything, and Engin gives him a small bag of money to help him survive. Ruto can't believe he's giving it to him, but Engin mentions that it's no big deal, because he got it by selling Ruto's clothes. He goes crazy hearing it, but Engin tells him that he couldn't go around wearing Spheric clothes, because it would put him in danger. Engin tells Ruto to wait there while he talks to his trainer, but a cat suddenly grabs his pouch and runs away. So Ruto tries to catch it, and realizes that it's much faster than him, but he notices a stick, so he quickly grabs it to pin down the cat. A man named Zonka arrives, telling Ruto that the stick belongs to him, and he forcefully takes it back. Ruto notices the cleaner's symbol, and realizes he's also a cleaner like Engin, but Zonka activates his power to teach Ruto a lesson. His attack narrowly misses Ruto, and he mentions that Engin put him in charge of his training, but he never thought his student would be a thief. Ruto explains that he was borrowing the stick to get his money back, but Zonka taunts him about how his father couldn't teach him basic manners, which pisses him off. But he remembers how Regdo told him to stay calm and listen to the other person, so he apologizes for taking Zonka's precious treasure. He thinks Ruto isn't a bad person, because he returned his staff, so he thinks he just overreacted. Ruto realizes it's the first time he defused a situation, and he thinks Recto was right about more things than he thought. Zonka helps him get up and asks about his vital instrument, so Ruto tells him it's probably his gloves, but he doesn't know much about his ability. Zonka examines his gloves, and he thinks they're cool, so Ruto also wants to be friendly, and he remembers how Recto told him to smile. So he tries to show his happy side, but Zonka is creeped out by his odd expressions, and thinks Ruto is making fun of him. He thinks about why his smile looked creepy, and he tries to do it with his eyes and lips closed, but Zonka still thinks he's mocking him. Zonka thinks Ruto is just overconfident because Engin called him a genius, but he reminds him that they're always putting their lives on the line, while Ruto is taking it too casually. He thinks Ruto doesn't even look serious when he talks about his goal, so it must be a foolish one, but Ruto remembers how Recto told him to change the world, and his mood suddenly changes. He tells Zonka that he's serious about his goal, so he should never make fun of it, but Zonka notes that he knew they wouldn't get along, and he pulls out his weapon. Ruto also grabs a rod behind him, and Zonka is shocked that he can make any object his vital instrument, thinking it's the reason why Engin called him a genius. But Zonka tells Ruto that his natural talent won't help him defeat someone more experienced, and Zonka's staff suddenly falls from above, which surprises Ruto. Zonka grabs it and charges at him, so he's forced to defend himself, and Zonka tells him that his vital instruments are the only things special about him. Ruto struggles to keep up with him, and he gets pinned to the ground, but Zonka smells the dirt that fell on him, and he suddenly freaks out. He notices that Ruto is holding a plunger, but Ruto can't understand why he's reacting that way, so Zonka tries to explain what a plunger is. But Ruto isn't in the mood to listen, and he keeps swinging at him, so Zonka starts running away. Ruto doesn't understand why he's so scared, but he chases after him, and he manages to cover him with poop. Engin arrives, and he thinks they've already become friends, but as they get in his car and discuss what happened, he bursts out laughing, and Zonka can't believe he was humiliated. Engin tells Ruto that Zonka is a spoiled kid, and he never expected someone to throw poop at him, but Zonka is still the most skilled giver in their group, so Ruto will learn a lot from him. Zonka is surprised that Engin considers him a skilled person, but Engin suddenly asks a girl named Rio when she got there, so she mentions that she was just curious to meet Ruto. She starts checking his hair to see if it's natural, and he's surprised that a girl is playing with his hair, wondering if it's what life is like on the ground. Engin drives them to the cleaner's headquarters, and Ruto's shocked by how impressive it looks. Engin introduces him to the receptionist Miyu, because every newcomer must meet her, but she quickly notices the flies and stabs them with her fork, which impresses Ruto. Engin notes that her vital instrument is her glasses, which boost her vision, so she can see anyone's true potential when she focuses. She uses her ability on him, but she's shocked by what she sees, so Engin asks her about it. She notes that Ruto's already athletic, and he has a good connection with his vital instrument, but he still needs training to use it properly. Engin can tell that there's something she isn't telling them, but she mentions that Ruto has poop on the back of his neck, which makes Engin realize why the flies were chasing them. He takes Ruto to meet their boss, but while walking, he looks back at Miyu, because he thinks she's hiding something about Ruto. On their way, Engin tells Ruto that there are about 100 members in their organization, and he thinks they should meet them, since most of them aren't in the headquarters. But the room is surprisingly full, so they decide to delay the introductions. As they arrive outside the boss's room, Engin notes that Ruto shouldn't demand information right away, and he should offer his services in exchange for it. He also tells Ruto that he shouldn't ask the boss about his vital instrument, because even if they don't know about it, they still respect and follow his lead. They open the door, but they realize that the room is empty, and Miyu notes that she forgot to tell them that the boss is out on a mission, so he won't be returning for a few days. Ruto is disappointed, and he wonders what he'll do next, but Rio suddenly appears, and she notes that he can't become a cleaner until he gets approved by the boss. She tells him to tag along with her as a trainee, thinking it will help her learn more about him. Miyu leads them to another room, where she explains that a small town near the polluted zone has requested their help because trash beasts have been sighted there. Ruto asks her about polluted zones, so she explains that the ground is divided into the safe zones that support human life, and the trash-filled polluted zones where trash beasts live. She reveals that the area where Ruto landed is called No Man's Land, and it's heavily polluted, so if they go there without a mask, they'll die within 15 minutes. She gives him a mask, and they all leave for their mission, but he wonders who the other guys are. So Rio tells him they're supporters, and they don't have special powers like givers, but they try to be useful. One of the supporters named Gris shakes Ruto's hand, which shocks him, because Gris has an extraordinary grip, and Rio notes that he can smash through the outer shell of a trash beast. They notice trash beasts coming toward them, and Ruto panics because he wasn't expecting such a large horde, but Rio assures him that they're weak, and we see that they can't even damage the fence. But another group of trash beasts suddenly appears, and Ruto panics as he realizes they're about to break the fence, but she still thinks they're ideal for his training. She tells him they should quickly finish them off, so that they can return and celebrate his first mission, but he wonders why she's so laid back, because the beasts could kill them. She tells him that he needs to stay cool if he wants to survive, and he wonders if that's what he's missing, but a giant beast suddenly breaks through the barricade. Rio finds it impressive, but she thinks it isn't suitable for him to fight, so she prepares to take it on, and she throws a pair of scissors into the air. They suddenly become massive, and she uses them to cut through a horde of beasts, while Ruto is surprised that she can use the scissors with her feet. He realizes that everyone uses their vital instruments in their own way, but a trash beast suddenly attacks him from behind. So Gris stops it with his bare hands, and sends it flying towards Rio, who slices it in half with her scissors. She tells them to send more beasts towards her, so they all follow her orders, and Ruto realizes that they can't kill the trash beasts without powers, but they can disable them, so that the giver can deliver the finishing blow. They soon take out most of the small beasts, leaving only the giant one, so Rio shifts her attention to it. The supporters try to clean the rest of them, but a trash beast suddenly awakens, and it's about to attack a supporter, so Ruto rushes to save him. He thinks he can't be a burden, and he activates his powers, but he almost kills the supporter as his weapon transforms, so he realizes that he still can't control his abilities. The beast overpowers him, but Rio suddenly comes to his rescue, and praises him for being brave. They wonder if she defeated the giant monster, so she tells them how she cut it a few times, but it just won't go down. She can't understand how it could survive her attacks when she targeted its core, but she decides to keep pushing, and the supporters leave to report their findings to the headquarters. Rio jumps at the beast, and she starts cutting the tentacles coming out of its head, but she notices something bright underneath, which she thinks must be its core. She's about to attack it, but the beast reattaches the tentacles back to its head, and starts hitting the ground to push her off. It suddenly directs its attack towards Ruto, who isn't able to react, but it luckily misses its target. The ground starts crumbling, and as he falls, he wonders how he'll take revenge on the man who killed Recto when he can't even defend himself. Gris grabs him just in time, and he carries him on his shoulder, telling him to learn from the supporters, who are giving their all despite having no powers. Ruto sees Rio cutting up the monster, and she realizes that it's screaming because she found its weak spot. She jumps high into the air and launches her ultimate attack at its weak spot, which finally destroys the monster, and its body turns to ash. Gris wonders how she defeated it, so she shows him a cutter that was powering the beast, but he can't understand how a trash beast can have a vital instrument. Meanwhile, the leader of the kidnappers wakes up, and he can't remember what happened after he was defeated. But he notices a man named Jabber sitting on a sofa, and he asks the kidnapper about the location of the Spherite kid, because he was talking about him in his sleep. At the cleaners' headquarters, Rio throws a welcome party for Ruto, and Zonka also joins them, but he notices that Ruto is sitting with his head down. He asks Rio what happened to him, so she tells him that he's been like that ever since he failed to use his vital instrument, and Zonka finds it sad. But he asks her about the strange beast they encountered, so she tells him that instead of finding a core, they found a vital instrument inside it. She notes that she didn't know what to do, so she decided to leave it to her seniors and enjoy the party instead. Gris notices Ruto sitting alone, so he tells him he did great, but Ruto thinks he was useless. Gris reminds him of how he saved a supporter named Folo, but Ruto still thinks that he was a burden to the group since he couldn't use his powers properly. He's frustrated because even on the sphere, Recto had to cover for him, and he feels like he can never live up to anyone's expectations. Gris thanks him because unlike other new cleaners, who think supporters are useless since they don't have powers, Ruto treats them with respect. Gris believes that instead of thinking about getting stronger or fulfilling other people's expectations, he should think about what he really wants with his life. He tells Ruto to believe in himself, and Engen suddenly joins them, wondering why Ruto hasn't eaten anything, and everyone encourages him to have fun at the party. Meanwhile, Jabber tortures the kidnappers' leader and asks him for more information on Ruto, but he mentions that he's already told him everything, so Jabber finishes him off. At the cleaners' headquarters, Miyu receives a request, and she calls the whole team to inform them about the situation. Zonka wonders why Ruto is also there, because he hasn't officially joined the cleaners yet, so Miyu explains that the job is relevant to him. She reveals that the request is from a merchant who was attacked by a trash beast in the polluted zone, and she was able to escape with her life, but she lost her precious cargo. She needs them to defeat the trash beast and retrieve her cargo, which is actually a living spherite, and they're all shocked to hear it. Ruto knows that he can't use his powers properly, but he still decides to accompany them because it might give him a hint on how to return to the sphere. Miyu mentions that she would have asked Engen to lead them, but he's busy with something else, and he believes that Zonka will do a good job in his absence. Zonka is happy that Engen trusts his abilities, so he leads the group to the polluted zone, telling them it's time to get to work. On their way, Ruto asks Gris if he doesn't carry a weapon, so he reveals that he has a knife, but he trusts his hands more than that. Another supporter tells Ruto that Gris actually has a talisman, and he prays for their safe return every time they leave for a mission, but he's embarrassed that everyone already knows about it. They reach the polluted zone, where they meet the merchant, who tells them she was transporting our luggage when she ran into an unconscious spherite. She was worried about him, so she decided to carry him, but a trash beast took him along with her cargo. Ruto wonders if she plans to sell the spherite, but she tells him that isn't the case, explaining that she's just interested in them. Zonka feels like something isn't right, because trash beasts usually attack humans on sight, and they don't just kidnap them. The merchant leads them to the building where the trash beast took the spherite, and Zonka tells everyone to be alert, because the trash beast can attack them from any direction. As they head inside, they find it empty aside from a figure in the distance, but the girl pushes them all forward, and they realize it's actually a doll. The floor suddenly sinks, and they're all taken to the lower level, while the merchant points at Ruto before turning into mud. They see two purple lights approaching, and Zonka realizes they've been tricked by raiders, while Ruto wonders if they're kidnappers. Gris tells him that they started as a group of thieves, but they've become more evil in the last few years, and he notes that all of them are givers. He tells 3 supporters to secure an exit route, while he and Folo will protect Ruto, and he asks Zonka if he can take care of the raiders. He tells them to leave it to him, and Ruto thinks he can deal with a few bandits alone, but Gris warns him that they aren't ordinary kidnappers. Zonka tells the raiders that he knew they would come after Ruto, but he didn't expect them to be so quick, and he thinks they plan to sell him for a fortune. But they reveal that they want to extract information about the sphere from him, wondering how he made it across the border without dying. Zonka realizes there's no trash beast in the area, but one of the raiders tells him they have mud monsters, as she creates dolls to attack him. He knows that she was the one who lured them there, but he's confident that he can win against her, and he activates his staff. But she tells him to be careful, as her partner comes out of a golem and attacks him from behind, sending him flying into the wall. The girl notes that cleaners only fight against trash beasts, so they have no idea how to fight humans, and she uses the same strategy as before. She sends multiple mud puppets to attack him, while her partner hides in one of them, and Zonka struggles against their combined attacks. Zonka tries to rush at her, but she changes the ground into mud, which stops him from moving freely. She tells him he'll get stuck if he moves too much, and he's the only one amongst their group who stands a chance of fighting her, but he's irritated with her constant yapping. He notes that he's seen right through their attacks, because he thought she was controlling the mud puppets using her shovel, while the man attacked him using his vital instrument. But Zonka realized that he was wrong, because the man's vital instrument are his shoes, which allow him to move on mud. He taunts them by calling them the perfect little couple, and he admits that he isn't experienced in fighting against people, but he knows his vital instrument better than them. He strikes the ground with his staff, which creates a shock wave that allows him to see through the entire basement, and he finds the man hiding in the mud puppets. So he charges at him, knocking him out with a single blow, and he also hits the girl, causing her dolls to disappear. He thinks they were too easy to defeat, but Jabber suddenly appears behind him and notes that he can say the same thing about him. Meanwhile, Ruto and the supporters reach the exit door, so Gris orders his men to head upstairs and call for help, while he checks on Zonka. A figure comes walking towards them, and they think it's Zonka, but it turns out to be Jabber. He looks at Rudo, and realizes that he matches the kidnapper's description, so he jumps towards the wall and destroys it to block the exit. Gris tells him that Rudo is a member of the Cleaners, so going after him will make them instant enemies, but Jabber ignores the warning, and explains that he's late because he got lost. Gris asks him about Zonka, but Jabber ignores him and tells Rudo to come with him, because there's someone who wants to talk to him. He removes Rudo's mask, telling him there aren't any trash beasts there, but Rudo pushes him back, and asks him about Zonka. So he explains that he went easy on him, since he only knocked him out, but Zonka must be in serious pain because of his poison. Jabber activates his vital instrument, and his rings turn into claws, as he tells Rudo to come with him, but the supporters rush to attack him. He dodges their attacks and kicks them away, telling them he's only interested in Rudo, but Gris gets in his way. Jabber remembers hearing about supporters who work with the Cleaners, but he finds them useless since they have no vital instruments. Rudo tells Gris to step aside, because he can't fight without a weapon, but Jabber tells Rudo that Gris is already dead. He stabs Gris with his claws, which shocks Rudo, and Gris falls as his lucky talisman slips, so Rudo grabs it before it hits the ground. We go back to the day Recto found Rudo, who's hitting his head against the wall, so Recto wonders why he's doing that. He reminds Recto of his lesson, that he shouldn't hurt other people, but Recto can't understand the cause behind his breakdown. Rudo mentions that he just has so much anger inside him that it's hard to explain the reason, but Recto believes that it's because Rudo's parents abandoned him, and he thinks that he's worthless. Recto tells him that he just hasn't experienced good things, so he takes him outside where they do lots of activities, hoping to find something he really likes. It makes Rudo feel better, but Recto thinks that they still haven't found the one thing he really loves, and Rudo notices someone throwing trash, so he rushes there and retrieves it. He grabs a mask and starts crying, and Recto wonders what made him cry, so Rudo explains that people shouldn't throw away slightly broken things that have a whole life ahead of them. He mentions that he wants to fix it, and Recto realizes that it's more than just a projection of his own state, because Rudo can perceive the true worth of broken things. We return to the present, as Rudo activates Gris's lucky talisman, which shocks Jabber. Gris realizes that Rudo couldn't use his powers earlier, because his ability isn't just to convert things into vital instruments, but to draw out their full potential. Despite seeing the activated talisman, Jabber doesn't panic as he grows more interested in what Rudo's true powers are. Folo attends to Gris, while Rudo thinks it was because of his conversation with him that he finally understood what he really wanted to do. He promises to prove to Jabber that supporters aren't useless, and he prepares to fight him, but it only makes Jabber more interested in him. Folo realizes that Gris is losing a lot of blood, and he won't survive for long, but he mentions that he'll be fine. He thinks the reason Rudo couldn't use his instrument earlier was that he had negative emotions clouding his main purpose, but he thinks they no longer need to worry about it. Jabber rushes toward Rudo, and they start fighting, but Jabber wonders why Rudo is just holding his ground, asking him if he really wants to fight. He tells Jabber to come at him with everything he's got, but he fails to land a hit, so he becomes frustrated, wondering why his attacks aren't working. Rudo tells him that Gris prayed for everyone's safe return, so he's prioritizing defense by making sure that the enemy can't hit him. Jabber thinks that his ability allows him to dodge attacks, but Rudo notes that it's the opposite, because he hasn't even moved an inch. He reveals that the one who is actually moving is Jabber, which confuses him, so Rudo explains that the talisman allows him to know where Jabber is going to end up. He once again charges at Rudo, who stops him in midair, and explains that the talisman only has defensive powers, so he needs to use his fist to attack. He manages to land a punch, which makes Jabber's nose bleed, but instead of being worried, he seems to be enjoying their battle. He realizes that Rudo is using the talisman to direct his movements, and asks him if he thinks it's fair to fight like that, but Rudo reminds him that he was the one who wanted to play. So he'll play Jabber's game until he gets knocked out, and Jabber teases him, telling him he's heartless, but Rudo notes that he shows no mercy to those who hurt his friends. Jabber tries to attack him from behind, but the talisman stops him, and creates a perfect opportunity for Rudo to punch him away. But Jabber refuses to give up, and he uses his speed to create a dust cloud, which blocks the talisman's vision. He cuts slabs of concrete and kicks them towards Rudo, who manages to dodge them, and Jabber closes in for a sneak attack. But the talisman once again detects his presence, and Ruto smashes him to the ground, but he immediately gets back up. Jabber starts jumping around, but every time he gets close to Ruto, he's immobilized by the talisman and gets hit. After getting bashed so badly, he can't even stand up because he's out of energy, so Ruto wonders if he's had enough, but Jabber laughs hysterically since he enjoys it. He believes Ruto must have enjoyed giving him such a beating, but notes that he's learned the talisman's secret, that it detects hostile intent and moves the attacker out of the way. He notes that when he threw the concrete, the talisman didn't stop it because things don't have a hostile intent. He reveals that his vital instrument carries a powerful neurotoxin in the right claws, but he stabs himself with it and notes that it hurts. But he loses his mind every time he does it, and he wonders if Ruto's talisman can detect hostile intent after he loses control. He screams as he gets more energy to fight, which makes Ruto nervous, but Jabber suddenly charges at him, and Ruto narrowly dodges his attack. Ruto realizes that Gris and Folo might get hurt if he doesn't move away, so he tries to run, but Jabber continues to pursue him. Ruto tries to use his talisman, but it doesn't work, so he throws Jabber away. Jabber gets back up and starts behaving crazy, which impresses Ruto, since he quickly adapted to the talisman's powers, but he wonders if Jabber is a masochist. We go back to Ruto's childhood, where he's bullied by other kids, but he doesn't fight back, so they wonder if he's a masochist. But he has no idea what it means, so he goes home and asks Reito, who's surprised by his question. We return to the present, as Ruto thinks that if Jabber really is a masochist, he has no idea how to defeat him. Jabber charges at him again, and as Ruto tries to evade his attacks, Jabber slices through the concrete to use it as a distraction. Ruto uses the talisman's arms as cover, but Jabber breaks through his defense, leaving him wide open. But something suddenly comes flying and hits Jabber, and Ruto notices that it's Zonka's staff. We see Zonka struggling to stay on his feet, but he notes that Jabber shouldn't have gone after his student when he hasn't even defeated him. Ruto is surprised that Zonka has overcome the poison, but thinks he isn't at his full power, so Zonka taunts him for underestimating his teacher. He's impressed that Ruto finally managed to use his vital instrument, telling him it looks cool, but Ruto tells him it no longer works against Jabber. Zonka wonders if it's only triggered by hostile intent, and Ruto asks him how he knows that, so Zonka mentions that he watched their fight before joining in, because he's supposed to be Ruto's teacher. He comes up with an idea, and asks Ruto to let him hit him once, because he wants to test something. Ruto is surprised hearing this, so Zonka explains that he can't move much on his own, but there's a chance that his attack will trigger the talisman, and move him towards Jabber. Ruto thinks he'll get hit if Zonka is wrong, but Zonka tells him that it's their only option, and Jabber gets back up. He slashes the pillar close to them, and Zonka tells Ruto to be careful, because his claws are deadly. Zonka rushes to attack Ruto, but the talisman flies him above Jabber, and Zonka smashes him in the face. He's glad that their plan worked, but Ruto wonders if he really attacked him with hostile intent, so he explains that it was just a test. Jabber gets back up, so Zonka tries to hit Ruto again, who launches him forward, and he smashes Jabber to the ground. He tells Ruto to be gentle, but he mentions that it isn't an option, and they both prepare for another combined attack. Zonka lands a barrage of hits with Ruto's help, which brings Jabber back to his senses, and he recognizes Zonka as the man with a bad attitude. Zonka delivers the final blow, and he's glad that it's finally over, but he falls to the ground from exhaustion. The talisman suddenly turns to ashes, and Zonka wonders if Ruto's weapons are on borrowed time, or if there's another reason behind it. Ruto blames himself for breaking Gris's precious talisman, but he suddenly has a seizure, and Zonka notices the wound on his back, wondering when Jabber hit him with his claws. Jabber uses his claws to regain energy, and Zonka wonders how it's possible, so Jabber explains that the chemical from his left claw can help him overcome pain if taken in small doses. He knows that Zonka will soon recover from his poison, so he poisons him again, and he starts running away with Ruto. We learn that he can't move his body despite being awake, and he blames himself for what happened to everyone, thinking he's the reason why they got hurt. As they head outside, Rio sees Jabber, and Engen suddenly attacks him with his umbrella, sending him crashing into a wall. Jabber is surprised to see a whole group of cleaners, and Engen knows that the raiders plan to trap them in a basement, where they couldn't use their choker comms. But Tom and the other supporters were able to contact the headquarters, using a telephone in the nearby town. Tom is worried about Gris and the others, but Ingen assures her that they won't break that easily, and he orders the supporters to go check on them. Jabber starts acting insane, so Ingen wonders if Ruto really fought against such a freak, and Rio notes that he's in better shape than she had anticipated. The cleaners are angry at Jabber for hurting their comrades, and Ingen notes that they have questions for him, telling him they won't let him get away. Jabber tells them he wants to escape, but he has orders from his boss to bring Ruto, so he must fulfill his duty no matter what. He activates his vital instrument to fight the cleaners, but a girl named Katoni suddenly comes from behind and grabs him, telling him he needs to return. He mentions that the game isn't over and he was just getting to the good part, but she notes that the boss had a big smile, which changes his mind. He tells the cleaners it's gotten pretty late and apologizes since he won't be able to fight them as he prepares to leave through a manhole. He praises Ruto because he finds him skilled for a spherite, and he tells the cleaners to give his message to him since he must still be under the poison's effect. But Ruto curses him with his remaining energy, telling him it's not over. He's surprised that Ruto is still awake after such a heavy dose of poison, but Ruto mentions that he won't let him escape until he pays for what he did to Gris. Jabber finds it impressive that he's a hard fighter, but he suddenly notices the pattern on Ruto's gloves, and he wonders if Ruto got it from a series. He thinks it's a cool coincidence, and their boss will be happy to hear about it, but he needs to leave, telling Ruto he'll come prepared the next time they meet. He leaves with Katoni, and tells Ruto to take care of his gloves, saying he looks forward to playing with him again. After that, Ruto rushes to check on Gris, and he apologizes for breaking his talisman. But Gris notes that even though he cared about it, it has already served its purpose because it was able to help them out. We see Ruto sitting on a bench, and Ingen joins him, asking him why he looks depressed. So he reveals that it's because of Gris, and explains that he's sad because he couldn't save the person who saved him. Ingen notes that Gris understood what he was getting himself into, and tells Ruto he put his life on the line to protect him, because Gris knew that he was a good person. Ingen tells him to give Gris his respects, so they head to the hospital, but he's surprised to see that Gris is still alive. Ingen starts teasing him, realizing he was sad because he thought Gris was dead, but he wonders how Gris is still alive, because he was stabbed through his chest. So he explains that it's because of the cleaner's medical team, revealing that he was saved by a girl named Isha, who's a giver with healing powers. He thanks her for saving him, and tells Fulo not to look sad, because he was the one who kept him safe when Jabber went berserk. Gris tells him to keep going at his own pace, because he can't rush his way to becoming a giver, and he cries hearing this. Gris praises Ruto for holding his own against Jabber, and tells him not to worry about the talisman, explaining that he's glad it was useful to them in the end. A man suddenly joins them, as he notes that one of the raiders mentioned the border, so he thinks they were researching the sphere. Ingen calls him the boss, so Ruto realizes that he's the leader of the cleaners, and he introduces himself as Corvus. He explains that he wanted to reject Ruto because he was only planning to stay with them to get information. But after learning that he put his life on the line to protect his comrades, and he even has powers that could contribute to their cause, Corvus welcomes him to the cleaners. Ruto heads to Corvus's office, where he explains that the border lies between the sphere and the ground, and it's said that anyone who tries to cross it will die. But he tells Ruto about a woman who lives near the border, and notes that a traveler once got lost in no man's land, so the woman helped them, but they asked her why she lives there. So she explains that she stays there to watch people who fall from above, and reveals that there are people who come and go without dying. Ruto thinks she might be able to help him return to the sphere, but Corvus tells him it will be a dangerous journey, and Ingen suddenly joins them, telling Ruto that the uniform looks good on him. After that, Ruto prepares to leave for no man's land, and Fulo tries to stop him, but he's determined to meet the woman there. Ingen tells him to relax, and explains that he'll die if he goes there alone, because he doesn't know the limits of his powers yet. Ingen notes that they also have the raiders to worry about, and Ruto wonders how they can become givers if they're evil. So Ingen explains that even bad people can become givers, because their morality has nothing to do with how they treat objects. He tells Ruto to relax for now, because they've been busy the past few days, so he tries to sleep in his room, but Rio suddenly appears, and offers to show him around the headquarters. She gives him a tour, and asks him what he did while he was in the sphere, so he reveals that he would just go through trash. She wonders if he had sweets in the sphere, so he reveals that he never had the chance to taste them, because they were only for rich people. but she mentions that they have sweets in the headquarters, and he's surprised to see them, while Engin tells him not to get addicted to them because they're more popular than drugs. Rio reveals that a group called the Vianders sold it to them, and Engin notes that it's hard to grow crops because of the pollution, so the Vianders collected givers who specialize in making food. Rudo tastes the sweets, and he can't believe how delicious they are, so he starts eating them all. But a boy suddenly stares at him, and Rudo thinks he must also like sweets, so he gives him a lollipop. The boy immediately eats it, and he asks for more, so Rudo wonders what's wrong with him, but a man stops the boy and apologizes for his behavior. After that, we see Rudo trying to use his powers on a knife, but it doesn't work, so Rio and Engin tease him, telling him it must be because of the sweets. Zonka knows that he likes to fix things people have thrown away, so he thinks his power only works on garbage, and they decide to give it a try. Rudo grabs onto a piece of metal, and it transforms into a weapon, so everyone realizes that Zonka was right. He tells Rudo to keep going, and he manages to create 2 more weapons, but he suddenly gets a nosebleed and falls to the ground. Engin thinks the quality of the gloves is so high that his body can't keep up, and Rudo asks him what he means, so Engin explains that an object's quality improves the longer it's cared for. But Rudo wonders why the talisman crumbled after he used it, while the weapons he transformed are still okay, so Rio mentions that it might be because the talisman fulfilled its purpose. She thinks his power allows him to bring out an object's full potential so that it can fulfill its true purpose, and Zonka thinks it makes sense because the talisman fell apart when Rudo felt safe. Engin also agrees with her and tells Rudo he didn't break the talisman because he just lets the discarded objects have a chance to go out with a bang. Rio recalls that Jabber said something about Rudo's gloves being part of a series, so he thinks there must be others like them, but she asks him if they have a name, because the givers name the instruments they use. Meanwhile at No Man's Land, Jabber and Katoni report to their boss, and he learns about everything that happened, and we see that his coat is part of the same series as Rudo's gloves. We see Rudo as he struggles to wash his hands, and he returns to his room, but he sees Rio on his bed, so he wonders what she's doing there. She reveals that her room is directly below them, and she heard him groaning, so she decided to check on him. He apologizes for disturbing her, and she realizes that he made noises while he was washing his hands, so she asks him what happened to them. But he mentions that only his real parents know the answer, and she notes that their parents gave them good and bad things before leaving through the window. The next day, Corvus tells everyone that Rudo's full face isn't done yet, but Rudo has no idea what he's talking about, so Engin explains that cleaners wear masks when they enter No Man's Land. He reveals that they have an artist who makes their masks and clothes, but he freaks out whenever he's given a deadline, and it affects the quality of his work, so they just make him go at his own pace. Corvus tells Rudo that he'll have a spell cast on him for the meantime, and Miyu explains that No Man's Land is dangerous, so they'll have a giver to draw a protection spell on him. Rudo is confused hearing this, so she explains that the giver comes to HQ to draw the graffiti on the walls, but they haven't seen him in a while. Engin tells Rudo that they'll head to Canvas Town to meet him, and he introduces Rudo to the members of their team, explaining that they have more givers than usual since they're going to No Man's Land. A giver named Delman suddenly approaches Rudo, and he screams as he mentions that he heard about Rudo's story, telling him he can't forgive the people who made him suffer. But another giver named Keynes tells Delman to calm down, and he apologizes to Rudo, telling him Delman is a good person, but he can be loud since he's passionate. Engin tells him to give them his trademark speech, so he screams as he tells everyone that their journey will be dangerous, but they won't falter since they're cleaners. Everyone screams with him, and Rudo doesn't know what to do, but he decides to join the others anyway. After that, everyone heads to Canvas Town, and Rudo wonders why it looks strange, so Keynes explains that big cities are shaped like a dome, since it protects them from the sphere's trash rain. We see 2 men trying to enter the town, and they realize that the gate is open, but they still can't pass through it. Engin and the others walk into the town, so the men become confused, and he tells Rudo to just walk in, telling him they can come and go as they please, as long as they don't have bad intentions. Rudo realizes that the town is full of graffiti, and Engin explains that the people on the ground like to paint, but not everyone thinks highly of it, so they made Canvas Town, where they can draw wherever they like. Rudo wonders what they're doing there, so Engin explains that they'll meet the artist giver, who has the power to put protective spells on anything he draws on. Engen reminds Ruto about the men who can't enter the town, revealing that it's because of the giver's spell, which prevents people with bad intentions from going through the gate. But Engen mentions that his vital instrument is a rare breed, since it can be passed down to another giver, and he suddenly bumps into a girl named Remlin. He asks her if she's okay, but he realizes that she's crying, and she completely ignores him. The mayor appears, and he notes that the cleaners arrived earlier than expected, while Engen explains that they weren't expecting to see him there, asking him where they can find the giver named Gob. But the mayor reveals that he just passed away, and he shows them Gob's remains, revealing that he died of body pollution. The mayor notes that he wasn't satisfied with the safe zones, so he went to the polluted zones to draw his paintings, but he didn't wear his mask since he was too focused on his art. Ruto realizes that he died because of the sphere's garbage, but Keynes tells him to get over it, since it's a common cause of death on the ground. The mayor notes that Gob has already picked a successor, and he explains that the vital instrument has been passed down to several givers, but he doesn't know how they choose the person who will inherit it. We learn that Gob has chosen Remlin, but the mayor thinks she's too young to wield the pen, and explains that the people put a lot of pressure on its wielder. Follow notes that there are people who have high giver potential, and they can become givers even if they have no object they're attached to, thinking it has something to do with aptitude. The mayor thinks it will take time before Remlin can wield the pen, and Engen tells him not to worry, since there's no need to rush. The mayor cries as he remembers Gob, and notes that he was a passionate painter, while Engen recalls that he used to drop by the HQ and draw whatever he wanted. Engen tries to talk to Remlin, but she doesn't say anything, so he just tells her to take care of herself. But she suddenly mentions that she's had enough, telling everyone it's time to celebrate, and she takes the pen and runs off. They see her on the rooftop, where she arranges the spray cans, and she admits that she's sad since Gob passed away, but she knows that he won't be happy in the afterlife if they're all crying. So she unleashes the pen's powers, causing it to transform, and she uses it to draw a symbol, which turns the spray cans into fireworks. She launches them into the air, and everyone enjoys the scene, as she tells them it's time to party. She notes that they must celebrate Gob's life with parties and works of art, and the people start painting everywhere, while the mayor tells Engen that he won't get his spell anytime soon. But he mentions that it's okay, since he knows that Canvas Town is the city of freedom and joy, so they should take time to celebrate. After that, Remlin finishes working on Ruto, but we see that she made him look like a clown, so he becomes angry. She mentions that she wants to start over, and tells him she wants to work well with him, revealing that her powers can't affect people without their consent. She notes that she always gets permission before she draws on walls, thinking it's the reason why her spells worked, and Engen wonders if her abilities are the same as Gob's. She explains that she has a lot in common with Gob, since they're both playful with their art style, but they don't think alike, so their drawings are different. She prepares to draw a protection spell on Ruto, which will allow him to survive a major hit, and she transforms her pen into a tattoo machine. Everyone's surprised that it didn't turn into a brush, and they realize that she can transform the pen into anything she wants. But she notices that they don't want her to make a tattoo, so she turns the pen into a brush and draws the protective spell on Ruto's back. After that, Engen thanks the mayor for his help, but the mayor notes that drawing on 9 people took a toll on Remlin, since she appears to be exhausted. They reach the gate, where they see the man who can't enter, and they realize that Remlin inherited the pen. So they ask the mayor why he let her have it, since they think she isn't worthy to wield it, and one of them mentions that he's a better artist, so he should have inherited it instead. But the mayor tells them to be silent, and explains that they can't enter the city because of their attitude, telling them they don't deserve to be called artists since they only care about fame. Engen leaves with the others, so the mayor and Remlin bid them farewell, and Engen tells Ruto that they'll return to HQ to get his full face. But they first head to a dump site, and Engen tells Ruto to pick anything he wants, so he rummages through the trash. After that, they meet the artist August, who reveals that he has finally completed Ruto's mask, and he mentions that it will be a perfect fit, since he already took Ruto's measurements while he was sleeping. Ruto is shocked hearing this, and August notes that he didn't lock his room, so he was able to go inside while Ruto was sleeping. Isha suddenly approaches him and tells him to stop causing trouble for everyone, and she calls him her big brother, so Ruto realizes that they're siblings. The team prepares to leave, but Engen tells Ruto to remove his choker, and he realizes that everyone's injuring themselves, so he becomes confused. but Ingen tells him to hold out his choker while they put their blood on it, and he mentions that it's like a communicator, which they can use to talk to people they've traded blood with. Rudo puts it back on, wondering what kind of artifact it is, but Ingen tells him that they also need his blood. They start traveling to no man's land, but Ingen tells Rudo that he brought a lot of trash, and he notes that they need to walk at a certain point, so he orders him to just take what he can carry. They reach a desert called Penta, which is filled with waste matter that's turned to dust, and they see a monster approaching, so Rudo prepares to take it on. We see the full-face mask that August made for him, and he recalls how August taught him how to connect it to his oxygen tank, so that he can breathe while he's in no man's land. Rio fights 3 scorpions, and she cuts them down with her scissors, while another monster charges at Zonka, so he dodges its attacks, and uses his staff to stab its head. He gets surrounded by scorpions, but Ingen suddenly descends from the sky, and he uses his Octashredder to shatter the ground, wiping out the monsters in an instant. But he realizes that he missed one of them, so he tells Rudo to take care of it, so he charges him with a keyboard, which he turns into his vital instrument. He presses several buttons, and they fly up into the air, before crushing the scorpion to death. Ingen thinks there's trash buried under the dust, but he hears Gris as he scolds Tom for writing her reports during combat, telling her it's too dangerous. She explains that she wanted to write everything immediately, since she might forget about them, and she notes that she trusts everyone, reminding him that it's their duty to protect her. Rudo sees a woman approaching, and she introduces herself as Amo, but everyone wonders why they couldn't sense her presence. They aren't sure if she's the woman they're looking for, and Rio decides to ask her directly, wondering if she saw people traveling between the sphere and the ground. She mentions that Rio is right, so Ingen realizes that she's the one they're looking for, but she notes that they can't talk there, since the air isn't good for her lungs. She invites them to her house, and Rio finds her suspicious, but Ingen thinks he can defeat her if she tries to harm them. She leads them to her house, which looks like an abandoned tower, and Rudo wonders if it can take them to the sphere. She invites them inside, and they think the place looks creepy, but she tells them to head to her living room for hospitality. They climb up the stairs, and she tells them they can remove their masks, since the air is safe to breathe, and she notes that she wants to see their faces while she's talking to them. They reach her room, and she's happy to see them without their masks, since she finds them attractive, but Rudo wonders how she got so many items in the middle of the desert. He asks her about the people who travel between the sphere and the ground, but she immediately changes the topic and asks him about the type of women he likes. She reveals that she likes people who have a strong smell, and mentions that she likes Ingen, but she suddenly starts smiling, and Rudo finds her creepy. Ingen asks her if getting romantic is the price for info, revealing that they came to learn about how to enter the sphere, and he mentions that he's willing to play along. But she becomes upset hearing this, and she starts to lose it, because she thought that they came to talk to her, but she realizes that they just want to use her. Ingen tells her he's interested in her, but she knows that he's lying, so she mentions that she no longer likes him, and he tells her to cover her body since he can't concentrate. But she's angry since he's complaining about her outfit, and she notes that she's breaking up with him as she unleashes her powers. So he realizes that she's a giver, but Rudo sees the pattern on her boots, realizing it's part of the same series as his gloves. Delman suddenly shoots Ingen from behind, and he gets knocked out, so Rudo asks Delman why he did that. Rudo thinks Amo is controlling him, but she just asks him about the type of woman he likes again, and she wonders why he isn't answering her question. She mentions that she wants to talk to all of them since she doesn't get a lot of visitors, but she notes that she doesn't like Ingen. Rudo realizes that she's insane, and Zonka doesn't want to talk to her since she hurt Ingen, telling her he'll crush her since she's their enemy. She cries hearing this, and tells him he's mean for hurting her, but Delman suddenly starts attacking Zonka, who thinks she's controlling him. But he mentions that she's the reason why he fights, so he'll do anything to protect her, and Keynes knows that he isn't being controlled. So everyone becomes confused, and she tells them that Delman is her #1 fan, but Keynes knows that she's lying, since he knows that Delman wouldn't betray his comrades just to simp over her. But she tells them they were wrong about him, and he activates his vital instrument as he prepares to take them on. She mentions that she has another fan among them, and Rudo suddenly remembers the officers from the sphere, who used to look down on him for being filthy. One of them grabs him, so he freaks out, but we see that it's actually Keynes, who saves him from Delman's water gun. Keynes tells everyone that Delman's vital instrument causes anything it hits to grow by forcing its target to absorb the water, but if they absorb too much fluid, their bodies will end up bursting. He thinks Delman used his silent nozzle to shoot Engen from behind, but notes that he never used it on a person before, so he wonders what Amo did to him. Rio prepares to take him on, and Zonka tries to stop her, but she wonders if he's on their side, since Amo mentioned that she has another phantom on them. Delman shoots her while she's distracted, and he blasts a hole into the building, but we see that she was able to dodge it, and she realizes that she almost died. Keynes tells Rudo to get back up, but he starts talking to himself, and we see that he's hallucinating about the officers in the sphere. Everyone smells something familiar, and we learn that Amo is making them hallucinate about their loved ones by using their sense of smell to make them remember their past. Rudo remembers Chiwa, who shows him the teddy bear he gave her, and she mentions that she'll treasure it forever. But he recalls that she just threw it away when he was about to be thrown into the pit, and he starts talking to Amo, so Keynes realizes that she's making him hallucinate. She reveals that she's using her boots to make a smell, which reminds everyone about the happy moments they spent with the people they love, and it makes them want to protect her. Zonka and Keynes wear their masks so that her ability won't affect them, and they prepare to take her out, but Rudo sees Chiwa being arrested by officers, and Amo tells him to save her. So he punches Zonka and Keynes away, and they see that Rio and Follow are also under her spell. They realize they're surrounded, and Keynes realizes that he doesn't have a choice, so he prepares to use his vital instrument. Amo mentions that she now has a lot of fans, so she thinks Keynes and Zonka don't stand a chance, but Keynes activates his vital instrument. Delman charges in with the others, but Keynes spins his weapon, and it releases ropes in all directions, allowing him to restrain all of them. Amo tells them to do something, but Keynes explains that they can't move, since the rope becomes tighter as they try to resist. But they still try to attack him, and Amo explains that it doesn't matter, since they'll put their bodies on the line to protect her. Keynes notes that his vital instrument is a distaff, but he realizes that she doesn't know what it is, so he explains that it's used for winding thread. He spins it once again, and they get pulled in, as he completely traps them with his ropes. We see that he has also captured Amo, and he tells her to return them to normal, while Gris asks Tom how Engen is doing, so she mentions that he appears to only be unconscious. Amo notes that she's in pain, and she screams for help, so Delman and the others try to break free, but Keynes mentions that he's had enough. He strikes the floor to release all of them, but it causes the ropes to spin with incredible speed, and it shatters the ground, causing them to fall to the bottom. Zonka's staff saves him from falling, but he tells Keynes that he went too far, since he seems to have killed their comrades. He jumps to the bottom, and Amo laughs at him for killing his friends, but he reminds Zonka about Remlin's spell, explaining that they'll survive because of it. Rudo's wound heals thanks to the protection spell, and Engen appears behind Amo, revealing that he removed one of her boots. She tells him to give it back, and explains that she doesn't want him to touch it, since it will lose the smell of someone important to her. Gris wonders how long Engen has been healed, and he's amazed that Remlin's spell saved him from internal bleeding. So Tom notes that Engen was completely fine when she gave him first aid, and she thinks he was just pretending to be unconscious so that he could strike at the right moment. He promises to return her boot if she cancels her ability, but she explains that she can't use her powers with just one boot, so his friends have already stopped hallucinating. Delman is finally back to normal, and he asks Keynes what happened, so he explains that Amo used her powers to make Delman think she's the woman he loves. He isn't happy hearing this, since he thought the love of his life had come back to life, and Engen realizes that everyone's wearing their masks, so he returns Amo's boot. Zonka wonders what they should do to her, since he thinks she's too dangerous to be left alone, and she's angry that they ruined her house, but Rudo suddenly removes his mask and approaches her. We cut to the cleaner's HQ, where Corvus asks Miyu what she saw in Rudo, and she doesn't want to talk about it, but he mentions that he wants to know the truth. So she reveals that she saw something she has never seen before, and notes that there appears to be a curse growing within him, which could end up destroying the world. We return to Amo, who thinks Rudo removed his mask since he wants to smell her, but he suddenly smashes her head. Everyone's shocked seeing this, but he continues to beat her up, so Engen pulls him away and tells him to calm down. Gris mentions that he didn't need to go that far, reminding him that she's a girl, but Rudo explains that it doesn't matter, and notes that she deserved the beating since she tried to kill them. But Engen wonders how they're supposed to get info from her, and Ruto sees that she's unconscious, so he realizes that he's screwed up. Engen tells Ruto they need to talk, and he orders Tom to patch her up. Ruto reveals that he was taught to hold his temper when he was still in the sphere, but when the people sent him to the ground, he realized that he can't win if he just holds it in. He notes that he just realized how he has returned to his past self, who just hits people around him since he can't control the darkness inside him, so he thinks he hasn't changed at all. Engen mentions that he likes pretty women, and he doesn't enjoy being with kids and ladies who have problems, but he can't hide that from the girls, and he knows that it's one of his bad traits. He notes that even adults have issues they need to grow out of, and he's glad that Ruto is aware of his problems, telling him he'll surely improve as a person. Tom gives Amo first aid, and she apologizes for what Ruto did to her, telling her she's willing to talk to her as much as she wants. Amo mentions that she'll make a good mother, revealing that her mom is the reason why she got her treasure and saw the angel traveling between the sphere and the ground. But everyone's surprised hearing this, and they ask her about the angel she just mentioned. In a flashback, we see Amo as she sees a raven, and she thinks it looks cute. But her mother tells her that it won't like her, so they should just leave it alone. She tells Amo that she's about to meet someone who will love her, and they see a strange man, as her mother notes that he'll love her forever. She immediately believes her mother, and she happily joins him, but she was actually being sold. He takes her to the tower, and she thinks it looks amazing, telling him she wants her mother to see it, but he knows that her mother has given up on her. He gives her food and clothes, and she asks him about his job, so he reveals that he's a trafficker, but the other people in his business don't like him, since they think he's creepy. He asks her to perform a ritual with him, but she explains that she isn't interested, since it makes her feel strange. He convinces her that she's in love with him, and she immediately believes him, so she agrees to do the ritual with him. After she wakes up, she sees the man telling himself he's not alone, and she's happy that she finally met her first love, but two strangers suddenly appear. The man is angry since they're trespassing, and he prepares to fight them with his vital instrument, but one of them charges in and knocks him out. The strangers take his boots and gives them to Amo, telling her to use them since they will fill the void in her heart, and the strangers see an opening in the room. So they prepare to leave, as they tell her to take care of the boots until the time comes, and they suddenly grow wings, so she thinks they must be angels. She watches them as they fly away, and the man wakes up, so she tells him she just saw an angel, but he suddenly pushes her down and scolds her for taking his boots. He kicks her as he calls her a thief, and notes that she's supposed to follow his orders, but she suddenly realizes that her situation isn't normal. She thinks about how her feelings have suddenly changed, realizing it's because of the boots, and she believes that they suit her better, so she refuses to hand them over. She activates their powers, and the man wonders why they're responding to her, since vital instruments can only be used by their owners. She notes that she doesn't know anything about vital instruments, but the angels told her to keep the boots, and she mentions that her heart feels full when she holds them, so she wants to keep them. The man refuses to let her have them, and he tries to take them from her, but she mentions that her heart is filled with emotions, and begs him to let her keep the boots. But he tells her to let go since they belong to him, and she starts to lose it, so she screams at him to give her what she wants. But he kicks her, and they start fighting over the boots, but she ends up biting him and pushing him out of the tower. She realizes that she just killed him, and she starts asking herself questions, wondering how she ended up there. She knows that her mother sold her, but she refuses to accept the truth, so she tells herself that her mother sent her away so that she can fall in love with someone. After that, Amo discovers her powers, but she lives a lonely life in the tower, so she wants to be loved by people, and we see her watching the angels as they travel between the sphere and the ground. We return to the present, as Tom realizes that Amo has a tragic past, and everyone wonders if the angels are givers. But Keynes thinks they are real, and mentions that she must have been hallucinating, since she's mentally unstable. Rio asks her about the angels, so she reveals that she doesn't know much about them, but she mentions that they returned to the ground about a month ago, which is around the same time Ruto arrived. She draws the angel on the floor, and Ruto recognizes him as the person who killed Recto, so he realizes that he can find him on the ground. Ruto gets fired up, and he's determined to find the angels, so that he can get answers from them and avenge Recto. But Alma wonders if he's just like her, asking him if his gloves made his heart human, since she knows that their vital instruments belong to the same series. She notes that they suit people who have a big hole in their hearts, revealing that she felt human after she got her boots, and they helped her understand her situation. She starts crying as she notes that the man mistreated her, and she admits that she wants someone to love her since she's lonely, so she waited for people to come visit her. But she knows that their meeting didn't go well, and she tells Ruto he doesn't need to apologize for beating her up. She notes that the world never changes, since everyone only uses their hands to hit other people, but he tells her they need to hold their hands out to each other, because it's how they can form connections. He admits that he doesn't know how to do it, but he wants to learn with her, and she's happy hearing this. After that, the cleaners prepare to leave, and she tells them she'll stay in the tower for a while, but she wants them to visit her when they get the chance. They bid her farewell, and as they leave in their car, Engin notes that they didn't learn how to cross the border. But they at least got something from visiting Amo, since they learned about the existence of angels, and even saw a vital instrument with the same symbol as Ruto's gloves. Ruto thinks about the angels, and he recalls that he almost lost it when he learned that they're on the ground, but he felt better after he talked to Amo. We see Amo wishing that they can have a sleepover the next time they visit her, but there's suddenly someone that appears behind her, and she screams as he takes her away. After that, we see Jabber walking away from the tower, as he notes that the desert is harsh, but he at least got what he was looking for. As Engin drives the car, everyone complains about how bumpy it is, and Ruto realizes that Rio is in pain, since Remlin's spell didn't cure her non-lethal injuries. So Engin notes that they need to see a doctor, and they realize that there's a city nearby, but Ruto thinks it looks familiar, and he sees the doctor who cured him when Engin first met him. Her patient isn't happy with the way he's treating her, because she keeps shouting at him, but she tells him to suck it up, and notes that she needs to finish her job since her grandkids will visit her today. After she finishes patching him up, he pays and tells her he'll never come back, but Engin thinks she's cool, and reveals that she was the first doctor ever to treat body pollution. He explains that she studied polluted objects to find a treatment for body pollution, but her behavior was affected because of her exposure to them, which explains why she's always shouting. She reveals that her name is Alice, and August arrives with Isha, calling Alice their grandma, but they're surprised to see Ruto and the others. They reveal that their parents passed away, and they often drop by the clinic, so that Isha can learn about healing. Engin notes that they have a strange family, and after they heal Ruto and his friends, August prepares to leave with Isha, but he tells them to find shelter, since it's about to rain trash. They find a place to hide, and Engin tells Ruto that countless people have died because of the rain, while Keynes notes that it's the reason why people from the ground hate the sphere. Rio wonders how Ruto and the angels were able to get past the border, and he explains that he doesn't know, since he doesn't remember everything clearly, but he feels like he saw something. Engin receives a call from Miyu, who asks them where they are, so he reveals that they're on their way back to HQ. But she tells him to go around the back way, since they're dealing with an infestation. Engin drives everyone back to HQ, and Ruto asks him what Miyu meant, so Engin opens a secret door, and reveals that it's the back way she was referring to. He notes that there are pests outside the HQ, but Ruto isn't sure what he means, so he explains that he's talking about marauders. Ruto thinks they're dangerous, so he notes that they need to support Miyu, and Engin mentions that they need a break, since they just returned from no man's land. The marauders fire a rocket at the HQ, and they demand that the cleaners give Ruto to them, threatening to burn the base if they don't cooperate. But Miyu talks to them through a speaker, and notes that she's glad to see them in the open, so they explain that they want to fight fair. But we learn that they're just a distraction, and their companions are trying to break into the HQ. They threaten to put another hole in the base, but they realize that the rocket didn't do damage, and their companions join them, telling them they can't get into the building. Miyu tells them they need permission from the invincible shut-in to enter, but she comes out to fight them, and tells them to bring it on. One of them fires a rocket at her, but she uses her ability to slow down time, and throws it back towards them, causing them to explode. They open fire, but she dodges their bullets thanks to her ability, and easily beats them up. Engin isn't surprised that she defeated all of them, and she tells him they're just low-level punks, but she wonders how they found out that there's a spherite in the base. We see a man drinking in a bar, and we learn that he always goes there to unwind, but he sees the cleaners and thinks they're creepy, since they have a nasty look in their eyes. But Rio tells Ruto that she accidentally finished his drink, and the man freaks out when he sees him, since he looks like he's about to lose it, so the man runs away. The cleaners start eating together, but Ruto thinks they don't have time to relax, since their base was just attacked, but his friends tell him it's important to take breaks. They tell him it isn't the first time they've been attacked, and Engen notes that Miyu beat the attackers every time, so Ruto realizes how capable she is. But he wonders why she's just a receptionist, so Engen explains that her glasses aren't effective against trash beasts, and notes that she enjoys working in an office. Rio explains that not all givers hunt trash beasts, and explains that those who want to use their instruments to the fullest become attackers, while those who wish to preserve them become defenders. A girl suddenly joins them, and she reveals that she's from Team Child, but Ruto remembers one of them, so he tells him he won't share anything with him today. The girl greets Ruto, but he doesn't recognize her, so she reminds him that she was in the room full of cleaners when he first came to the base. Their leader Buro realizes that they haven't introduced themselves, so he reveals that her name is Guida, while the boy is called Deer. Guida asks Ruto about the sphere, but Buro tells her not to talk about it outside the base, and Engen notes that the marauders who attacked the base got their info from someone at the bar. He thinks the person who gave them the info wants to test the HQ's defenses, but she continues to ask Ruto questions, so he runs away. A stranger talks to Ruto, who tells him they were attacked by bandits, and the man thinks the raiders are behind the attack, so he tells Ruto to be careful of them. He notes that their new boss is ruthless, and he tells Ruto that they're looking for something like the one he's holding, and Ruto realizes he has Amo's boots. The man reveals that he's the leader of the raiders, so the cleaners rush towards him, but his companion uses her vital instrument to create a portal, which sucks the givers into it. The cleaners are sent to a dark room, and they wonder where they are, but they see the raiders, so they prepare to take them on. Ruto asks their leader about Amo, and Engen wonders what they're after, but the boss mentions that everything's going according to his plan. Garbage comes out of the ceiling, and the boss pulls Ruto towards him, as it sweeps away the other cleaners. Zonka struggles to stay in place, but he sees Engen riding his umbrella, and he tells Zonka he'll get buried if he fights the current, so he decides to just let it carry him, but they end up getting separated. The boss lets Ruto go, and he wonders where his friends are, so the boss tells him it doesn't matter, but he orders the other raiders to take care of them. They jump into separate portals, and after they leave, the boss reveals that his name is Zodil, and he invites Ruto to join him, revealing that his goal is to take down the sphere. He reveals that he's never seen it before, but he knows that Ruto is thinking about what will happen to the people he hates after it's destroyed. He tells Zodil not to change the topic, and asks him what happened to his friends, but he explains that Ruto is the one trying to change the subject. He explains that he already answered Ruto's question in his own way, and tells him to listen to everything he's telling him, since he hates wasting his words. So Ruto realizes that he's difficult to deal with, and thinks he's being held captive by Zodil's words, but he knows that he can't fight him, since he doesn't have enough trash with him. Zodil asks him why he joined the cleaners, so he explains that it's to find a way back to the sphere, but Zodil thinks the cleaners won't help him, since it doesn't align with their duties. Rio wonders where the other cleaners are, and she walks around to look for them, but a girl named Noerd suddenly appears behind her. Rio realizes that they were all separated so that the raiders could fight them one-on-one, and Noerd notes that Zodil will punish them if they don't complete their mission. We see Jabber charging at Zonka, who manages to block his attacks, and they appear to be evenly matched. But Jabber sees a corrosive acid, and he jumps towards it, wondering what will happen if he touches it. It ends up burning his hand, so he screams in pain, but Zonka realizes that his left claw absorbed the acid. Jabber explains that his right claw has a neurotoxin, but he sometimes gets bored with using it, so he uses his other claw to test other substances. He throws the acid at Zonka, but he lifts the ground to protect himself, and flips it towards Jabber, who ends up getting crushed. Zonka knows that he's still alive, so he waits for him to get back up, but Jabber uses his giant claws to break the rubble. He's happy that he can finally go all out against a worthy opponent, and Zonka can't believe that he was holding back all this time, but he tells Zonka to fight him with his full power. We see Engen waiting for a raider to approach him, and he starts taunting him, but the raider doesn't come out of hiding, and he thinks about how cool Engen is. Deer and Buro wonder where they are, so their opponent reveals that they're underground, telling them they can use their chokers to confirm it. Rio realizes that her choker isn't working, since she isn't on the surface, and Noerd reveals that their orders are to kill them. She prepares to fight Rio, who takes out her scissors, but notes that she doesn't like fighting against people. No Word tells her not to hold back if she wants to see her friends again, so she activates her vital instrument and uses it to cut No Word's hair. She realizes that it's difficult to dodge Rio's attacks, but she explains that she doesn't want blood on her scissors, so she plans to just use them to cut No Word's hair. She thinks she has the advantage, since No Word's vital instrument is her comb, so she probably uses her hair to fight. Rio charges in, but she suddenly realizes that she can't move, and she falls to the ground, wondering why she was hurt when she touched No Word's hair. So she reveals that her vital instrument is a plastic comb, which creates static electricity, and she tells Rio she'll be shocked if she touches her hair. We cut to the girl who makes portals, as she uses her powers to check what's happening, but she's surprised to see a raider giving sensitive information. We see the raider Bundus, as he asks Buro if Deer is his son, so he explains that he treats him like he is, but they aren't related by blood. He notes that they need to get out of there as soon as possible, because Deer will get sleepy if they aren't back before nightfall, and Bundus wonders how old he is. So Buro reveals that he just turned 10, and he asks Bundus if he's there to fight them, since he doesn't appear to be hostile. So he admits that he doesn't feel like fighting, and he's only there because of Zodil's orders, but he notes that he has other goals. Buro wonders if they can skip the fight, but Bundus explains that he needs to defeat them to accomplish one of his goals, telling them he wants information. He activates his vital instrument, which creates walking fingers, and notes that if they give him the information he wants, he'll tell them what will happen if the cleaners lose. We see Corvus in the HQ, where Miyu tells him about what happened to Ruto and his friends, and she suggests sending people to look for them. But Corvus just drinks his coffee, and she wonders why he isn't wearing his choker, telling him it will help the others get in touch with him. He tells her to gather the available cleaners, and notes that he'll figure out where Ruto and his friends are, revealing that he knows an information broker who might be able to help them. We return to Bundus, as he asks Buro about Corvus, so he thinks Bundus wants to get important information about the cleaners, but he explains that he just wants to satisfy his curiosity. He promises not to tell the other raiders about their conversation, but notes that he won't leave until Buro answers his questions, so he won't be able to go home with Deer before bedtime. He decides to cooperate, so Bundus asks him about Corvus's favorite food, and Buro tells him that Corvus enjoys sweets. Bundus asks him more trivial questions about Corvus, but Buro doesn't know the answers, and he wonders why Bundus wants to learn such useless facts. Deer starts to get impatient, so Buro doesn't know what to do, but Bundus tells them it's his turn, and reveals that the raiders plan to feed the cleaners to a trash beast. He notes that the raiders were able to cultivate trash beasts, and Buro wonders why he's just telling them about it for free. But he explains that the information Buro gave him about Corvus is valuable, since it made him understand Corvus better. We return to Jabber, who reveals that he has spent a lot of time fighting opponents stronger than him, but he ended up becoming so powerful that average fighters are no match for him. He reveals that he enjoys going all out and fighting opponents he can't defeat, since it makes him feel alive, and he tells Zonka to show him his full power, but he can't think of a way to defeat Jabber. We cut to Zodil, who knows that the sphere is a place of abundance because of the trash they throw away, and he notes that humans change depending on their environment. But he wonders why he and Ruto have the same look in their eyes, since Ruto was raised in the sphere. We learn that Jabber told Zodil that Ruto smells like him, so he became interested in Ruto and wanted to meet him, but he tells Zodil that he could have talked to him like a normal person. He adds that he doesn't want to take down the sphere, since he just wants to return so that he can beat up the people who ruined his life, and he tells Zodil they aren't the same. But Zodil wonders what's considered normal, and he tells Ruto about the cult that worships falling trash, revealing that many of its followers end up getting crushed by the same trash they worship. He thinks it's normal for them since it's all they know, and they get labeled as heretics for going against it. But he notes that there's a way to snap them out of their delusion, saying a shock to the system will wake them up. He knows that Ruto was able to control his powers after Jabber shocked him, and he thinks about who Jabber is fighting, wondering if he'll awaken his powers or end up dying. We return to Zonka, as Jabber charges at him, and he thinks he doesn't stand a chance since he lacks talent, but he still decides to fight with everything he's got. Jabber pushes him back and attacks him with his claws, and Zonka manages to avoid it, but Jabber lunges at him and shatters the ground. Zonka destroys the rocks that are about to hit him, but Jabber appears behind him and knocks him back, before spinning his claws around to create a tornado. Zonka rushes forward, and swings with all his might, but Jabber appears above him and kicks him away. He tries to finish him off, but Zonka uses his teeth to stop Jabber's claws, telling him he won't die yet. He uses his staff to smash Jabber's ribs and punches him away, and he starts going on the offensive, so Jabber realizes that he was right about him, telling him to keep on fighting. So Zonka jumps forward and tries to kick him, but he manages to dodge it. So Zonka grabs onto his staff and spins around, and he manages to kick Jabber, but he uses his left claw to slash Zonka's leg. He falls to the ground, and Jabber reveals that when he's in all-out mode, his left claw holds 3 of the most recent toxins he used, so he thinks Zonka is done for. He sees him struggling because of his wound, but he shows him no mercy as he stabs him with his claw. In a flashback, we learn that Zonka is from a noble family known as the Najika clan, which has produced elite warriors for generations. His father tells him to follow in his footsteps and join the Hell Guard, so he enrolls in the academy, where the instructor reveals that the Hell Guard's goal is to keep humanity in line. We see 2 students talking about a girl who has exceptional talent, but they stop as Zonka walks past them, and they think they're nothing compared to him, since he's the top student in their class. They think he's a natural talent, and he's confident that the other students will never catch up to him, but we learn that he's working hard behind the scenes to keep the top spot. The teacher arrives in the classroom and tells the students that there's been a rise in giver crimes lately, so they need a Hell Guard that can stand up to givers. He notes that the class has been studying in the academy for 3 years, but they need a new talent in the Hell Guard, so he introduces a girl named Hyo to everyone. He explains that they made an exception for her and allowed her to join their class, revealing that she grew up in the slums, but her abilities are unrivaled. She defeats Zonka in a sparring match, and their classmates can't believe it, while the teacher is impressed, telling her she beat everyone during her first sparring session. He thinks she'll take the Golden Throne, which is the most exalted seat that's awarded to the best student of the year, but her classmates don't like her, since they think she's arrogant. They think she was only able to defeat them since her style caught them off guard, but they're surprised that she beat Zonka, who notes that he needs to train harder to catch up to her. He acts cool and walks away, but we see that he's actually upset, since he did his best during their sparring match, but he still lost to her. He notes that he'll train harder to keep the top spot, but Hyo tells him his nose is bleeding, and he realizes that she hurt him. As she washes her face, he tells her she's doing great, since she just joined the class, but she's already a Golden Throne candidate. She wonders what's so special about the Golden Throne, so he explains that everyone wants to sit on it, because the best Hell Guards have taken that spot in the past. But she thinks he just wants to take it so that everyone will think he's impressive, telling him it isn't worth it. Their classmates eventually realize that she's the real deal, so they start treating her with respect, and Zonka thinks they're disgusting. But he realizes that he's even worse than they are, since he thought he was better than everyone else. During their special class, the teacher shows the students the weapons he gathered, and tells them to pick the one they like. He explains that Hell Guards must be able to use several weapons, but picking a good weapon is an important skill, and the staff catches Zonka's eye. After that, Engen asks Zonka what he's doing at the bottom of a well, and he can't believe that Zonka has been there for 3 days. He explains that he crawled into the hole after the special class, where his classmates chose the weapons that looked effective, but he decided to go with the staff. He thought it had hidden powers, but it turned out to be just a random stick that had gotten mixed up with the other weapons. So everyone stared at him for choosing it, which made him embarrassed, while Hyo picked a sword as her weapon. He thinks he's the worst, since he wanted everyone to think he was a natural talent, but he now knows that there's nothing special about him. He notes that he wants to die, since he thinks he's as lame as the stick he chose, but Engen wonders if a mediocrity like him can beat natural talent. He knows that Zonka still hasn't given up, since he's still holding onto his staff, even though he knows that it's just a random stick. As Engen prepares to leave, he notes that he'll return to the city, and he wants to see if Zonka can defeat fighters that are more gifted when he sees him again. Zonka climbs out of the well, and we return to the present, as he gets up and summons the staff to his side. He coughs up blood, but he tells Jabber he won't die yet, since he needs to prove that even someone as mediocre as him can defeat a natural talent. But we learn that he's just hallucinating, because Jabber's toxins have already spread to his brain, and Jabber starts celebrating his victory, but he suddenly feels a sharp pain since his ribs are broken. He's disappointed that their fight is already over, but Zonka suddenly starts laughing, and Jabber realizes that he's having a blast, so he joins him and starts laughing as well. We cut to Guida, who's looking for the other cleaners, and she notes that she doesn't know what to do since she's all alone, but she's glad that she already made a friend. We see that it's a cockroach, and it suddenly flies away, so she chases after it, but it leads her to a strange place, where she sees a core with hands attached to it. We return to Jabber, as he notes that the party is over, so he drags Zonka away, and tells him he'll feed him to the trash beast. But his leg suddenly gets shot, so he falls over, wondering what happened. Engen hears the gunshot, so he looks behind him, but the raider named Fu starts to panic, because Zodil ordered him to bring the cleaners as an offering. He knows that he can do that, but he's nervous that Zodil will punish him, since he was ordered to capture the cleaners before the other raiders finish their jobs. He notes that he doesn't know how to start a fight, so he begs Engen to attack him, but he refuses to do it. A few moments earlier, we see Rio fighting Noerd, who uses her hair to attack, but Rio manages to dodge it, and Noerd realizes that she's using wind to blow her hair away. She thinks Rio can't keep it up forever, and prepares to attack her again, but Rio comes up with a plan and starts running away. Noerd chases after her, but Rio hides from her, so she tells Rio she isn't a real warrior, since she fights like a coward. Rio realizes that she was right about Noerd, since her static electricity has a time limit, and she tries to cut her hair, but Noerd manages to dodge her attack. She kicks Rio away, and reveals that she has learned to move her hair, since she's had it for a long time. She admits that her static electricity has a time limit, telling Rio it only lasts for 2 minutes, and she's glad that she finally knows Noerd's weakness. But she tells Rio it doesn't make a difference, since she knows how to compensate for her weakness, and she starts fighting with her fists. Rio realizes that she knows how to fight, so she asks her what she used to do for a living, and Noerd reveals that she came from a warrior tribe, which was destroyed a long time ago. She hits Rio with her special move, and she manages to block it, but Noerd tells her that her weapon doesn't suit her fighting style. Rio disagrees with her, but she puts her scissors away, and notes that she doesn't need them to fight. They start to throw down, and Rio dodges Noerd's attacks, as they destroy everything around them. They appear to be evenly matched, and Rio manages to land a solid hit, but Noerd immediately recovers and smashes her to the ground. She uses her comb to create static electricity, and tries to shock Rio, but she jumps away and throws her scissors at Noerd, who manages to dodge it. They continue to clash, and after a fierce battle, we see that both of them are exhausted. Rio coughs up blood, so Noerd realizes that she has the advantage, and tells Rio that nobody will hear her if she cries for help. But she suddenly shoots Noerd with a gun, who wonders why she has a pistol. So she explains that she used to be a killer, and Engen told her to stop killing, but Noerd was too powerful that she had no choice but to use it. She notes that her scissors are her vital instrument, so she doesn't want them to be stained with blood, but her pistol is just an ordinary gun she got from her last boss. Noerd realizes that she used to be a hitman, and she tells Noerd to keep it a secret, telling her she won't kill her because of Engen. But she notes that she needs to look for her friends, and threatens to finish her if she doesn't tell her where they are. She can't believe there's a retired hitman in the cleaners, and she tells Rio that she doesn't know where the other cleaners are, but notes that the pipes in the area are linked together. So Rio realizes that it won't be easy to find them, and she recalls the moments she spent with Rudo, thinking he's a complete mystery, so she doesn't know what will happen to him in the future. Back in the present, Rio pulls up on Jabber, and he starts bleeding on the ground, but she knows that he's too stubborn to die. She realizes that Zonka is still alive, so she carries him away. The Portal girl reports to Zodil, and gives him an update about the situation, so he realizes that the cleaners are tougher than he thought. He tells her they need to keep moving, so she pulls Rudo into her portal, which takes him to the core. He's angry since the raiders are throwing him around, and tells Zodil he hasn't told him anything yet, but he reminds Rudo that he already gave him an offer, and even told him about their goal. But Rudo threatens to beat him up, telling him he doesn't like him, so Zodil realizes that it's hard to negotiate with him. We see Guida hiding behind a rock, while Zodil offers Amos boots to the core, causing it to start glowing. He tells Rudo that the boots are from the Watchmen series, and notes that their vital instruments are also a part of it, telling him he was trying to create his own entry. He reveals that the entries in the series have existed longer than the other vital instruments, and they all hold unimaginable power, because the original owner's anima was on a completely different level. Zodil notes that he couldn't make a new entry no matter how hard he tried, but he discovered something unexpected, revealing that vital instruments can be used to create trash beasts. Ruto wonders if there are other items that are part of the Watchmen series, and he recalls the moment that Recto gave him his gloves, wondering how he got them when the other entries are on the ground. Zodil thinks it's strange that Ruto ended up with the gloves, since he's from the sphere, and he wonders how Ruto can still retain his sanity, since he has an entry from the Watchmen series. We learn that the entries are so powerful that they make normal people go insane, so Ruto wonders why he still hasn't gone mad, and Zodil mentions that he's also still sane. He thinks they both lost an important part of their humanity, which explains why they can use the entries without issues, and he unleashes his powers. He tells Ruto he wants to know what will happen if one of them uses all of the entries, saying he needs to learn the answer to achieve his goal, and he reveals that his failed entry turned into a trash beast. He explains that it evolved through offerings of other vital instruments, and notes that everything's going according to his plan, revealing that they will use his giant trash beast to fly across the border. But Guida realizes that they're inside a trash beast, so she becomes excited, telling everyone it's kaiju battle time. Engen feels an earthquake, and Fu starts to panic, since he thinks Zodil is already executing his plan. But the ground stops shaking, and Engen starts walking away, as he tells Fu that he needs to look for his teammates. But Fu continues to pester him, telling him he has what it takes to defeat him, but he can't do anything unless someone gives him orders. He once again begs Engen to hit him, but he explains that he won't fight unless he finds a way out, and Fu tells him he can escape by destroying the wall, since they're inside a trash beast. Engen is surprised hearing this, and Fu asks him if he's ready to fight, but he notes that he isn't interested. We cut to Buro, who thinks the ground is shaking because Deer is sleepy, and he tells him to stop hitting the ground, since he's so powerful that he can cause a disaster. Bundes notes that they're about to reach the sky, since Zodil is executing his plan, and he tells Buro that they're inside a trash beast. He becomes shocked hearing this, but Deer smashes the ground, and he seems to be ready for battle. We return to Engen, as he tells Fu that humans aren't his specialty, and he reminds him that he's a cleaner, so it's his duty to destroy the trash beast. The trash beast awakens, and it's about to take off, but Deer and Buro activate their vital instruments. Buro notes that he never thought a trash beast could become so massive, but he wonders why they don't need masks, since he knows that trash beasts are filled with toxic materials. Bundes notes that they're inside a special beast, but he doesn't know the answer to their question, and Buro uses his vital instrument to launch Deer towards the wall. Bundes thinks he's about to shatter the wall, but his fist can't even damage it, and he continues to punch it, so Bundes tells Buro to stop him, but he restrains Bundes with his vital instrument. He tells him to listen as Deer makes progress, and he hears the wall as it starts to shatter, realizing Deer's attacks are getting stronger. Buro explains that his vital instrument allows him to drain power from his target, which explains why his strength is growing with each attack, and Bundes can't believe his eyes, as he realizes that Deer is about to destroy the wall. He smashes a hole through it, but Buro realizes that they still have a long way to go before they reach the outer shell. Bundes notes that he finds Deer interesting, but he activates his vital instrument, which creates mechanical hands, and he uses them to break free. He thinks he'll get a prize if he defeats Deer and Buro, so he decides to take them on, but the ground suddenly shakes, and it tilts sideways, as the trash beast prepares to fly. Everyone panics as they start falling, but Bundes knows that they're about to cross the border, and he doesn't know if they'll survive, but he still wants to defeat Deer and Buro. Buro grabs onto Deer, and tells him not to worry since they'll make it out alive, but Bundes jumps towards them, and notes that he wants to get his prize. They're about to clash, but a car suddenly interrupts them, and they realize that they're already inside it. They can't believe what just happened, and Bundes tells Buro to avoid the trash, so he tries to steer the car. But Bundes tells him he's doing a terrible job, and they start to panic, since they might die if they crash. Deer is about to fall off, but Bundes saves him, and he tells Buro to focus on driving, but they realize that the steering wheel is gone. The trash sends them flying, and they start crashing into the rocks, so they think they're about to die. But Bundes refuses to give up, so he uses his arms to protect the car, while Buro sees a metal pole, and wraps his vital instrument around it to change their direction. The car launches towards a pipe, and he can't believe that it actually worked, but everyone's surprised to see Engen, who wonders why they went on a road trip with a raider. Bundes tells him not to point his umbrella at people, and he sees Fu on the floor, so he asks him why he isn't fighting Engen. Fu explains that Engen wouldn't attack him no matter what he did, and we learn that Engen pointed his umbrella at him, but he ignored him to look for his friends. He tells Fu that he doesn't want to fight him, but Buru notes that they'll die if they don't get out of there, since the trash beast will fly to the sphere. He reminds Engen that people die when they try to cross the border, and Engen realizes that Ruto can finally return to the sphere, but he wonders how a giant trash beast can even fly. Buru notes that they need to look for the others, but they suddenly realize that their chokers are working, and Miyu asks them if they're okay. Engen is glad that they can finally talk to her, and he tells her about the situation, saying they might die trying to cross the border. But she just tells him to do his job and clean up the trash beast, and she thinks he has failed as the leader since he let his team get kidnapped. She wonders why they couldn't use their chokers if they weren't underground, and he tells her he doesn't know, but he suddenly realizes something as he learns that his other teammates still can't reach her. He promises to help them escape, but she wonders how he'll find them since their chokers aren't working. He explains that his name Engen was given by someone important to him, and it's a word from an old language, which means a person who connects people. He thinks it's his responsibility to bring everyone together, and Miyu tells him to take care of everything, revealing that they have found his location, so the other cleaners are already on their way. We cut to Zodil, who reveals that a trash storm comes once every 6 years, and he notes that the next one will happen today. He explains that he changed the trash beast's posture so that it can ride the winds, and he tells Ruto that he doesn't want to make him into an offering, since he knows a lot about the sphere. Zodil tells him to consider joining the raiders, since he can take him to the sphere, and he notes that the cleaners will never help him achieve his goal, because their only job is to destroy trash beasts. Ruto sees Guida below him, as Zodil teaches him to eliminate waste, telling him to get rid of everything that isn't necessary to achieve his goal. But he tells Zodil that he decided to name his gloves 3R, because it's a phrase people use to address environmental issues, and it means using things more efficiently to produce less trash. He notes that Corvus taught him the phrase, and he thinks meeting Zodil wasn't a waste, since it helped him realize that he has something Zodil doesn't have. He notes that he has a team that accepted him, even though he was just a kid filled with anger, and they knew that he was a spherite, but they still gave him a place to call home. He mentions that he'll never forget the people who ruined his life, but he lets go of the ledge, and tells Zodil he won't leave the cleaners. Zodil dives and grabs onto him, telling him he'll make him regret not joining the raiders, but Ruto thinks he's just jealous since he doesn't have a good team. He tells Ruto he's all alone, but Engen suddenly emerges from the ground, and notes that the cavalry has arrived. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.